Well, hi everyone, and welcome back. It's been a hot minute since I've made a video, but I'm back. It is the 30th of March, which means we've finally made it to the end of the month. First month on YouTube. Thanks everyone for your support, all 6 of you that bothered to watch these. I'm here in my room again, and we're here to celebrate. Or we're actually not here to celebrate anything. We're here for another episode of Hey Google, play Lionel Richie.
Playing Lionel Richie on Spotify.
Hey Google, stop it, turn it off, I don't like it. 1am book review. So I'm here with my cat. So she's here for the ride. Oh, sorry. And I'm going to talk about all the books I read this month. I read 7 books this month, so that's a pretty solid total. I would have done more, but it's been kind of an eventful month for me, not gonna lie. So without further ado, I'm just gonna do a little brief video. I'll try to keep them brief. Talking about all these books, give them ratings, my reviews, and yeah, all that serious booktube stuff, I guess. I don't actually have a cup of tea today because my mum said I need to stop drinking so much caffeine because I kept punching holes in the walls. Let's go on to the first book, which I actually read for uni, and it was The Translator by Layla Abulela, I believe that's how you pronounce that. It's a work of fiction published in 2008. I'd never heard of this book before. We just had to read it for my English course at uni because we were talking about representation of race and faith in fiction. And so they gave us this book. This was our set text. It handles setting really well. I never had a hugely emotionally investing connection with any of the characters. Not that they were bad, just because I never unfortunately found myself relating to them hugely. That's not to say that it was badly written at all. I actually thought it was pretty well written. Not amazing, but the prose was alright. Far from the worst book I read all month, but you know what, we're gonna get onto that. My biggest problem with this is that I think the ending is really counterintuitive and sort of defeats the overall message of the book, I feel like. So the sort of main emotional core of this novel is that there's this Sudanese woman who's a translator at a Scottish university, and she basically falls in love with this Scottish professor who is an atheist, and she's a devout Muslim. That's my cat clawing at the door. Hey, go. Don't come back. Okay, so where were we? And she's a very devout Muslim, and that becomes an issue with their relationship. In order to marry him, he has to convert to her faith. And I liked the direction they took it in that there was a sort of unspoken love between them, and sometimes things just don't work out. And I thought that's a great message for people to have. But then at the end, the professor just converts anyway, and I thought that was sort of fine, and it was just okay. But it feels incredibly out of nowhere. It just, the main character, Samar, gets a letter from his friend saying that this professor is converting to Islam. And it's just very sort of anticlimactic. I hate to say it, but it was just very anticlimactic. But the setup's really nice. I love that it's set in Scotland because that's something that I can really get behind. For a set text, I enjoyed it a lot more than most of the stuff they gave us, but it's alright. I mean, it's like it's just kind of like, it's whatever. 3 stars out of 5. I'd recommend it if you're interested in reading about faith and religion. It's definitely a very solid novel about faith. Okay, next book. After I read The Translator, I actually attempted to do a reading vlog, but I basically was too busy and completely failed. So I read 4 books in 1 week. The first of which was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This is a non-fiction book written by a Holocaust survivor, and it's sort of half autobiography, half philosophy, sort of self-help book kind of thing. As a history geek, I just think that the Holocaust stuff is so interesting, and it's fascinating to have like a first-person insight into that historical event, just since I've never actually read anything by a Holocaust survivor. I've only seen it in the movies, you know. The way that Viktor E. Frankl writes about tragedy but also hope and perseverance is really inspiring, and it makes you think. There's this great sort of idea that the Jewish people in the concentration camps who had given up on life would do stuff like smoking and, you know, sort of like self-destructive behavior because they knew that if they were unfit for work they would be executed by the Nazis quicker. I just think that's such a sort of harsh but really striking image and idea, and it kind of has a lot to say about self-destructive behavior these days and in relation to social media and, you know, like alcohol and stuff like that. And it is really insightful. I think this really holds up, and if you're interested in psychology and the human condition and stuff like that, this is definitely right up your street. I give 4 out of 5 stars. I think the first half is a lot stronger than the second half, but that's not to say that the second half isn't interesting. It's just less interesting than the first. But the first half is so gripping and really brutal, but also inspiring, and it really sends you for a roller coaster of emotions. And I sound like such a nerd talking about this, but it's like it's just really awesome, is the only word I can think of without sounding like Kung Fu Panda. It's just really awesome. So yeah, it's definitely one of the better non-fiction works I've read recently, and absolutely one of the best history books I've ever read. Even though it's not technically a history book, it's a autobiography / self-help book. But yeah, definitely give it a read if you're interested in World War II and especially the Holocaust. This is definitely essential reading. Alright, next up, I read, and I said I was going to read this in my book haul. I read Later by Stephen King. This is Stephen King's newest novel, quite a short one. It's part of the Hard Case Crime series. I've never actually read the other two. I haven't read any of those yet. I've got them. They're on the shelf back there somewhere. I didn't expect to enjoy this anywhere near as much as I did. I thought it would be sort of pulpy and cheesy and very one note, which it is, but but it is also extremely captivating, and because it's quite short and it's not a hugely complicated story. It's pretty, you know, you've seen this kind of thing before. It's basically The Sixth Sense. It's about this kid named Jamie who is able to speak to the dead, but only for a couple of days after they die, and he's sort of helping track down this killer with the help of his mum's girlfriend Liz. It's such a great character. Such a fascinating character. It's really captivating, and the pacing is like beautiful. It's great, especially with Stephen King. I feel like he has a tendency to wander, and this is probably one of a few of his books that didn't feel like it wandered at all. Everything felt very purposeful. It belonged there. There was no part where they just went to like Chuck E. Cheese and ate pizza. And I mean, yeah, like weird stuff happens. It's still Stephen King, but it feels like weirdly. This is gonna sound so dumb, but it feels very down to earth. Even though the story's literally about a kid that sees dead people, it's very, no pun intended, it's very alive. It's very kind of, there's some great wholesome stuff, especially between Jamie and his mother. Their relationship is really intriguing, and I loved it. I just can't sing this book's praises enough. The ending sucks, admittedly. The ending is dog shit, but it's Stephen King, you know? What were you expecting? Overall, I just thought it was a really enjoyable, fast read, and I can't really ask for anything more from Stephen King. I'm not expecting massive art house books or anything, especially these days. I do think his best work is behind him. However, I think this might be his best of recent years. I think If It Bleeds, his last collection was pretty good, but some of his other stuff, The Outsider, that just sucked. The Institute was dull, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of supernatural fiction or just Stephen King in general. This is one of his best in a while. Alright, so I wanted to wash down that easy read with something a bit more complex, so I went for The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by Mishima. This was my first Mishima book. I was a wee bit nervous actually to get into this. I bashed out in about 2 hours. It's really not long at all, and I absolutely loved it. Just thought it was just stellar. I have not that much to say about it, apart from the fact that it was just absolutely masterfully written. It's a work of art. It's genius. It's genuinely like astounding how, oh Jesus, I just dropped it. Genuinely astounding how much Mishima manages to communicate in such a short period of time. I mean, this book's only like 100 pages, and it is just very brief. We meet these characters, we kind of go along on a ride with them, and then it just ends very abruptly, which I think is something a lot of people will be not massively into. I think the ending's perfect. I think it ends incredibly powerfully, and it's not unsatisfying whatsoever, if you ask me. Yeah, I just loved it, and I can't wait to get back into his other stuff. I'm gonna try and read the Temple of the Golden Pavilion next month, because I don't want to get into the trilogy yet because it's really long. But as for this, I think this is actually, from what I've heard, is a great start. Introduction to Mishima. I loved it, and if it gets better than this, then I am way on board with this guy's work. It's just so savage, and it kind of reminded me of A Clockwork Orange, although I enjoyed it a lot more than A Clockwork Orange. It sort of follows this kid that's a little bit got a few screws loose. Definitely the trigger warning for this book. I think there's some stuff in here that's potentially triggering, incest, and yeah, it's kind of weird, but it's just so fun. I just loved it. You know what I mean? That's really all there is to say about it. Alright, following up that masterpiece, we have the biggest disappointment of the month. I read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste. Yeah. I was really, I had high hopes for this one. I don't really know where it went wrong. It was just kind of, yeah. It kind of meanders and it didn't feel very well paced. And at the end of reading it, I just felt like I didn't care. I think it starts pretty well, but I don't think I understand where all the praise comes from with this one. It's essentially a crime novel, kind of, although it reminded me a lot of Bag of Bones by Stephen King, which I actually think is a very underrated King work. I just really don't even, I feel like I've just forgotten most of it, to be quite honest. I don't have much to say. I listened to the audiobook, which usually really gets me invested in a book, but even that didn't really work. I gave it 3 stars out of 5. Oh, by the way, 5 stars out of 5. Chef's kiss. I genuinely don't think I remember a single character's name. I think one of them was called Marie. I don't know. It's essentially about a couple of families living in this sort of posh little village estate kind of area. And they're just kind of having a bad time. It's just so, I just really wish I liked it. It's okay, like it's not bad, and I feel like it's okay, like the way it's written. There's nothing inherently awful about it. I don't think there was any bad messages or anything, and I guess the characters are reasonably interesting, but it's just really forgettable, at least in my opinion. I gave it 3 stars out of 5. It sucks. No, it didn't suck. Well, it kind of did. Although, alright, I actually followed this up with another non-fiction, which I got as a Christmas present from my friend Rebecca. Shout out to you, Rebecca. This one's for you, hon. It's The Psychopath Test by Ron Johnson. John Ronson, sorry. That lad that's wrote about the goats. And I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I wasn't expecting to enjoy this, but I wasn't expecting to enjoy this. It's essentially about, it's non-fiction. It's essentially about the author going on a sort of exploration of psychopathy. Fucking hell. Psychopathy and learning about different mental disorders. And I just found it really fascinating, and the way that it unraveled was really kept me hooked. Yeah, which is something that a lot of non-fiction books don't do, because as soon as a non-fiction book becomes too factual and sort of non-fiction heavy, I guess, it instantly loses my attention. But this was a really good blend of anecdote and information. I loved it. I loved this style. I'm definitely more interested in reading more of his work. I'm very interested in reading The Man Who Stares at Goats. The Men Who Stare at Goats. I watched the movie and really enjoyed it, even though I've heard people don't like it at all. But yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Although it's probably more like a 3.5. There were parts that were sort of slow, and certain sections I wasn't hugely interested in. But then there was sections that I was really interested in. Like, I loved the part about misdiagnosing mental disorders. There was a great chapter about stuff like childhood bipolar, these kind of mental disorders that went unrecognized for several years. And I realize I'm stuttering with this one, but I think it's just kind of a case of, I think if you're interested in this kind of thing, read it. It's a really excellent book about mental illness, and not even just psychopathy. It's about all kinds of things, again, like bipolar, and they talk about kind of anxiety and depression, leading causes of suicide and stuff like that. And I think it handles it in a very tasteful but also entertaining way. It's fairly funny, which I was quite surprised by. But yeah, I'm really excited to read more of this guy's work and learn about the goats. And finally, I read the worst book of the month last. Of course, save the worst till last. The Lovely Bones by whoever wrote The Lovely Bones, Alice Sebold. Okay, well, I think it's safe to say I did not really enjoy this book. Again, I listened to the audiobook. I don't know why my 2 least favorite books of the month were both the audiobooks that I listened to, but here we are. Fortunately, I do remember enough about this to formally explain why I didn't like it, and it has a lot to do with message. I feel like the book is that the message feels incredibly, I hesitate to say misplaced, but there's certain parts of it where I feel like it's incredibly, it's just very strange. Parts of this that made me feel very uncomfortable in a way that I don't think was intentional. If you don't know what The Lovely Bones is about, there's a movie about it that I've heard shit. But it's essentially about this girl named Susie who is sexually assaulted and murdered by one of her neighbours and is sent to this sort of afterlife, heaven. They call it heaven in the book. Make of that what you will. And she sort of helps solve the crime from the afterlife. But that's not really what it's about. It's more just about human connection and family and all that kind of emotional kind of stuff. But the main issue I have with this book, other than it gets really boring after a while, the first 30 pages are great. The opening is fantastic, really gripping, heartbreaking. I was really invested, which is a shame because the rest of it sucks. I feel like this book is such a mishmash of ideas that seem like they would really work, and it's just that none of them work. I didn't really empathize with any of the characters except for Susie because she's the protagonist, and obviously what she goes through is horrible. There's something that happens near the end of this book with the main character that I feel like totally counteracts the whole message of the book, and it kind of insists upon itself in this assault begets assault kind of message, which I think is a really dangerous message to be put across. Personally, I don't know. The book itself isn't badly written. It's actually very well written. I think it's challenging in its, ideas, and it's definitely very bold. Heaven that they create in this book is interesting for a while, but really is nothing that original. I don't think. In my opinion, I think I've seen a lot better portrayals of the afterlife. But yeah, that the main thing with it is that I just really think that was a bit of a dodgy way to end it. I think the ending sucks, and it's not even just like it's boring. It's nasty and mean-spirited and just totally rejects the moral, I feel like. But I didn't write it. I don't know what was going on in Alice Sebold's head. Anyway, that was what I took away from it. I gave it 2 stars out of 5 because I do think it was still well written. But yeah, there was parts of it that just really irritated me in a very morally grey area-ish kind of way. So that's it. I told you it would be brief. I hope this was brief. I don't actually know how long I've been recording for. That's the video. All 7 books I read this month. Very good, very good, very good. Now I want to briefly talk about my goals for next month, my TBR for next month. I've set myself goals for next month. I think I'm going to make them monthly so that it's I can kind of pick books easier. So I've challenged myself to read at least 8 books. I'm not sure how, easy that's going to be since it's also assignment season at my uni. The goals I've set for myself are: I want to read at least 1 of each of these categories. 1 non-fiction book, 1 Kindle book, 1 book from an international country that isn't America or the UK, 1 Stephen King book because I need to get through my Stephen King collection. That's becoming an issue. I need to listen to 1 audiobook and read 1 classic. So that's the goal. And let me tell you about my TBR. I'll just flash images of these books up on the screen because they're sitting over there somewhere and I just can't be bothered going to pick them up. Alright, we have Christine by Stephen King, Never Let Me Go, Slaughterhouse 5, The Gunslinger, also by Stephen King, Wake Up by Pierce Morgan, I can't wait for that, that's gonna suck, Fahrenheit 451, classic, The Metamorphosis, that's a short story, Playing the Moldovans at Tennis, Into the Wild, Killing Floor, the first Jack Reacher novel, Temple of the Golden Pavilion, as I said, and The Last Family in England by Matt Haig, because I also have a lot of his books to get through. So that's the video, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all had a good March. I would also like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. You can use Squarespace to create an awesome free online imagine. Imagine me having a sponsor. No, I don't make money. This was a waste of time. So that's goodbye from me. Goodbye from Ken. This is Ken. This is a head I use to put wigs on. Get out of here. That was awkward. Tune in next time where I might even have batteries for my microphone that won't run out halfway through. And thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to come back if you enjoy this content. And if not, you're probably not even watching anyway. So shout out to the true fans. Sure they're out there somewhere. Anyway, this video's over. Bye. I think this may have been like the worst one yet. I mean, I don't even have socks on. I'm not going to show you or anything. That's for the 100k special.